Hello and welcome to our 7-8 minutes of weekly Torah talk. Our guest today is Rabbi Jack Romberg of Temple Israel in Tallahassee, Florida. Hello, Rabbi. Thank you for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
In Parashat Behaalotcha, Aaron is commanded to raise light in the lamps of the menorah, and the tribe of Levi is initiated into the service in the sanctuary. A second Passover is instituted. God instructs Moses on the procedures for Israel's journeys and encampments in the desert. The people are dissatisfied with their bread from heaven, the man, and demand that Moses supply them with meat. Moshe appoints 70 elders to assist him the burden of governing the people, and Miriam speaks ill of Moses and is punished with leprosy. The second pasuk of this parsha says, דבר אל אהרון ואמרת אליו בהעלותך את הנרות אל מול פני המנורה יאירו שבעת הנרות. Speak to Aaron, say to him, when you light the lamps, the 7 lamps shall cast their light towards the face of the menorah. So Rabbi, we have an eventful parsha with many features. Let's begin with the 70 elders and the incident that happens after Moshe appoints them. What is it about?
Well, it's about, first of all, that Moshe needs some help. He is asking God for help, and God is also saying, listen, I have to take something from you and spread it to some others so that they can be in the position to help you. And the position that they're going to take is the ability to prophecy, to be Nevi'im in their own way. And so God then says to Moses, okay, I'm going to take this from you, and he does, and he spreads some of what the ruach that is on Moses, and he takes it and he spreads it among 70 elders. And then as they're beginning to react to this new ability, all of a sudden 2 others who were not chosen to be part of the 70, Eldad and Medad, they then all of a sudden, they begin to prophecy. They get this ability at that time, and Joshua ben Nun comes running to Moses, to Moshe, and he says, "What are you going to do? You need to stop this." And Moses' reaction is, "No, I don't need to stop this. I wish everybody among the children of Israel could have the gift of prophecy."
Yeah, Joshua says there are too many prophets here, and some commentators believe that one part of the prophecy was that Moshe is going to die without entering the land, and Moshe says, well, I'll take as many prophets as possible.
Yes, to the point where he wishes that everybody had that gift, that everybody could connect to God in that particular way.
So what does it tell us about Moshe, and even more so about prophecy? Well,
that's the interesting piece of this, because in More Nevuchim, in the Guide for the Perplexed by Maimonides, he does a lot of discussion about what are the elements that actually create a prophet. And of course, a lot of More Nevuchim, he describes the need to understand the difference between what is actually true and false. In other words, to develop your intellectual capacity.
Right.
And he's specific about science and mathematics and physics and philosophy, that those are the important ways to build your intellect, so that the active intellect can properly activate your particular intellect. That the more you build that, the closer you can get to understand the reality of God. For a prophet, he then adds in this other piece, that there is an imaginative faculty through which the prophet experiences dreams and visions, and it is through those dreams and visions that God communicates. But what is interesting in our parsha is these words given by God to Aaron and Miriam, who had been mocking Moses, complaining about
Moses. This is in the later part of our parsha.
Right, exactly. So, and he says, "Vayomer Shimona divarei im yihiyeh neviachem Adonai b'mar'eh elav et vada b'chalom adaber bo." So just to say the last part, hear these words, when a prophet of God arises among you, I make myself known to him in a vision, and I speak to him in a dream. But then he goes on and says, not so with Moses,
With
not so
Moses.
with my servant Moses. With Moses, pe el pe adaber bo, mouth to mouth or face to face. Some people say, I speak to him. And so the question arises, what is it that's different about Moses than about other prophets?
So
What is the
he
extra?
basically tells them there is prophecy and then there is Moses' prophecy. These
Correct.
are different dimensions.
Correct. And that's a lot of what Maimonides talks about in the chapters in part 2 of More Nivuchim, roughly from chapter 34 through about 47, 48. And he's talking about what is it that builds up a prophet, and then he makes it clear that what's different about Moses is that his intellectual ability is at its peak. But now I have to question Rambam, because there is other commentary that adds a little something to it. And I think we can actually look back at this incident with Eldad and Medad in terms of what is it that Moses has in addition to intellect that qualifies him to connect with God at a deeper level. And by the way, before we even get to that, I have to add that Maimonides himself in chapter 36 gives a list of qualities that people have to have in order to prophecy, and among those qualities is a lot of moral value, moral qualities. And I like this one in particular. I'm going to read to you from this chapter.
Sure.
It is further necessary to suppress every thought or desire for unreal power and dominion, that is to say, for victory, increase of followers, acquisition of honor. In other words, it's necessary for somebody to have a sense of humility in order to reach a higher level of prophecy. So then if we go back to what happens with Eldad and Medad, and the fact that they were not chosen to be among the original group, Rashi comments that the two of them said when the group of elders were approached, we are not worthy of this distinction. They themselves were so humble, according to Rashi,
Right.
and some of the commentary, that they themselves said, we are not worthy of this. So they were so humble that God gave them this gift anyway.
Uh-huh.
And then look at Moses' reaction. Moses' reaction is not to condemn them.
Is to add humility to their humility.
Yeah, exactly. So Joshua ben Nun comes running to Moses and says, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with these people? They weren't chosen, and yet they're prophesying. And Moses responds, I wish that all the people, that all the children of Israel, that all of God's people were prophets, that all had this ability. That is his reaction. So rather than be upset that people he had not picked were receiving this gift, he had the humility to say, everybody should be on this level, everybody. So then we come to perhaps a quality that is necessary to get to that higher level of prophecy. And that's in our Torah portion just before the line I read about the vision and dream, and Moses, though, speaking to God face to face.
Right.
And that is in 12:3. Ve'ha'ish Moshe anav me'od mikol ha'adam asher al pnei ha'adama.
Right.
That Moses was the most humble of men on the face of the earth.
And you basically connect these two verses, and you say he has the most humility, and thus he was the most distinguished prophet.
Yes, I think that the lesson in the incident with Eldad and Medad, and commentary by Rashi saying that Eldad and Medad got their gift because they were humble, then Moses has a humble reaction. And then in the very next, a few verses later, in the very next incident being described at the end of the Parashat, when God describes Moses and the Torah describes Moses as being the most humble person on the earth, add to that one of Maimonides' qualifiers that you cannot be a person seeking power, a person seeking honor, a person seeking attention, then humility seems to be a key part of prophecy. And then I think we can take this one more step, if I may.
Oh, okay.
All right? And that is, I think that there's a lesson beyond just what is prophecy and who qualifies as a prophet. Because our tradition teaches us that prophecy ended centuries and centuries ago.
Right.
We do not have prophets today in anything like we had in ancient times. So what else can this be teaching us? Perhaps it's teaching us that if we wish to properly connect to God, we have to do it in a way in which our egos do not interfere, in which we open our hearts to the reality of God and open our minds as well to a reality of God, and not let our desires and our goals get in the way of creating that relationship.
Right. So you are basically saying we cannot practice prophecy, but we can practice humility.
Yes, I think we can absolutely practice humility. And again, if we go into the list of qualities that Rambam, teaches us that are necessary for prophets, they're necessary for all of us. Our thoughts have to be engaged in lofty motivations, in desire for the knowledge of God. Our passions have to be pure and properly balanced. All of these are things that Maimonides lays out as moral necessities to create prophecy. But indeed, if we're really looking at this Parsha as something not just historical, but something to teach us about how we should live today, then perhaps we should be absorbing some of this into our own lives in order to get a sense of the reality of God. Suppression of our own desires in a way that opens our heart and our mind to that presence.
Rabbi, thank you for this important lesson, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, and it was a pleasure to be with you.